I think it's helpful for people to meet Julian's other half and to see that we're real people. He's been dehumanized for years and years, and lots of lies have been told about him, so I hope I can help change the perception that we're real people and he's a real person who is suffering. Julian's been in prison for 2.5 years now. His conditions of detention are very bad because he is in the UK's most notorious prison alongside the worst criminals in the UK, convicted murderers and drug lords and so on. In the UK, they keep remand prisoners, so prisoners whose the outcome of their trial or hearings is pending in the same place as people who are serving their sentence. So Julian's treatment is no different than a murderer who is serving a 35-year long sentence. He's had very severe episodes inside the prison. It really depends on the degree of isolation and the circumstances. So, for example, in November, his wing of the prison had a COVID outbreak. So there was increased, even more isolation. And also one of the prisoners with whom he had a good relationship, a Brazilian man who was waiting to be deported to Brazil, committed suicide. So one of the closest people to him there killed himself. He hasn't received any visits since October. The last time I saw him was October, other than in the courtroom. The last time I saw him was when we tried to get bail on the 6th of January. And other than that, it's been phone calls. He hasn't seen his children, who are 2 and 4, for 7 months. There's an opportunity for the Biden administration to drop the case anytime. The US administration is talking a lot about press freedom, and it wants to project itself internationally as a defender of press freedom. But everyone laughs in its face and uses Julian's case as an example of Western hypocrisy and how the US really doesn't walk the walk. This is one of the interesting conversations I've had with some of the people I've been meeting with. Once they realize that Julian's being prosecuted for publishing activities, for journalism, and not for whistleblowing, then they really understand the implications. I think this is a bit of a conceptual problem, because the legal implications of prosecuting a person for the journalism are completely different to those of going after the whistleblower. It's a different set of considerations. You're entirely into the press freedom domain. Julian is charged with receiving documents from a source, with possessing documents, and with communicating those documents to the public. And those charges can apply to any other person who is exercising those same functions. And in fact, the Obama administration decided not to prosecute Julian, and announced as much in 2013 after Chelsea Manning's court-martial over the 2010 publications, because they said they couldn't find a way to prosecute Julian without that setting a precedent for the rest of the press. Now, under the Trump administration, there was a decision to prosecute Julian, not in spite of the consequences it might have for the press, but precisely because it would set a precedent that would allow the administration to go after the press. So, of course, it's very disappointing that Biden has not yet decided to drop the case. If it really does value press freedom and wants to protect the First Amendment, it is the obvious thing it should do. The New York Times and the Washington Post have said as much at an editorial level, and they have called Julian's prosecution the single greatest threat against the First Amendment and press freedom in the United States. But it's also a major threat against press freedom in Europe, because Julian was publishing from here. He's not an American citizen. The US is applying its laws extraterritorially into the European space, and this puts everyone at risk outside of the US borders as well. The time that Julian was in the embassy, towards the end of the 7 years, there was a change of administration in Ecuador, an approximation to the United States, and an extremely hostile environment developed in the embassy. And there was also a security company that was working for the company owned by Trump's biggest backer, Las Vegas Sands. That is now the subject of a court case in Spain, and through that court case we've learned a lot of details about what was actually going on in the embassy, including that our baby's DNA was instructed to be taken from a nappy, the fact that my mother was followed, the fact that Julian's life was, there were plans on his life. There was a plan to poison him, there were plans to kidnap him from the embassy, and that Julian's lawyers were targeted by name, they were followed, their homes were, there were photographs taken of their homes, and whistleblowers have stepped forward to cooperate with the investigation and to supply documents showing this. There's a lot of support on the ground. There's support at a high level with the major NGOs and so on, Amnesty International and RSF and Human Rights Watch, and the major papers, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, even conservative papers in the United Kingdom, the Mail on Sunday, Telegraph, and so on, are opposing the extradition, opposing his incarceration. I think the broader implications of this case are increasingly known by the organizations that specialize in free press and free speech that actually look into it. Also, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has been investigating the case and has been extremely outspoken. And at a human level, I think the population, when they understand he's not serving a sentence, he's an unconvicted man being warehoused in the UK's most notorious prison under conditions that are completely inhumane. They see, you don't have to understand the complexities of the case to see just how incredibly unjust and unfair and unsustainable it is. The only thing he did was inform the public about crimes committed by states and defend their right to know.